Tonight's story is about Maryasha Shagalov. Maryasha, growing up, I remember her sitting in front of the synagogue, the great shul in 770, and she would raise money for the Ola Torah Institute of Higher Education for Ola Torah. But here's her backstory. Maryasha lived to the ripe old age of 106, but it was not an easy life for her. In fact, Maryasha came from Russia, and she was a single mother bringing up her 6 children. It was not by choice, but this is what happened. Her and her husband Elchanan were living in Russia during the communist times. Communists said that we have to educate all the children, have to go to the communist public schools where they'll be indoctrinated with the communist way of thinking. And Elchanan Shagalov and his wife Maryasha decided they will not be sending their kids to the Russian schools, to the communist schools. But not sending your kids to the school can throw you into prison. So they decided to have no choice but to have to leave Russia. And so Elchanan went and took all his paperwork and he applied for an exit visa. And at first he was denied because of one excuse and then another excuse. He kept on coming back. Well, eventually they asked for a lot of money and he brought the money. Somehow he's able to get the money. Elchanan Shagalov now is told by the office that is in charge of the exit visas that don't come anymore. We're going to let you know when it's time to go. Elchanan knew that this is not a very good sign, and he began to get nervous. But he had faith in Hashem. A short while later, they decided that they're not going to take any money from the government for food or for clothing. This way, they're not indebted to the government, and this way they'll be able to educate their kids on their own and will not have to send their kids to the public school. But this only worked for a short while, because immediately after they saw this, they came and they arrested Elchanan Shagalov, and unfortunately, the family never heard from him again. To make matters worse, the government came to Maryasha and said, you can no longer live in your house, you have to get out of the house immediately. Her and her 6 kids, this is the middle of the winter, were kicked onto the streets with no place to go. Freezing cold, the children were crying, 6 little children, not knowing what to do. They went to the local synagogue, they begged the caretaker of the synagogue to let them stay there. Reluctantly, he said, okay, you can stay here, but don't cause us any trouble. So Maryasha and her 6 children went to the synagogue, not knowing what to do, not having anything to eat. She decided she's going to plant a garden in the back of the synagogue. And so she planted a garden in the back of the synagogue, and she noticed that just across the marking of the property line, the next neighbor was also planting her garden. And they were both planting radishes, potatoes, and other carrots, and other kinds of vegetables. Maryasha thought that perhaps that the garden should be able to feed her kids and also have enough to sell, be able to buy clothing and keep them warm. But a short while later, more bad news came. The communists said that they are coming to the synagogues, closing them down, and they're going to take all the books, the Sefer Torahs, the Holy Torahs, and they're going to burn them. Sure enough, the day came. Just before the communists were going to come to take the books, the people in the synagogue decided that they are going to take all the books out before the communists. They cannot get them, and they cannot burn them. And many volunteers came in the middle of the night and began to take the holy books out of the synagogue. And one guy said, we could take it through the back door where the cops will not see, and we can bring it to a safe place. And so they began to do this. But the neighbors started to complain, what are you walking on my garden? I just planted the garden. You're going to ruin all my vegetables. Stop walking on my garden. Maryasha said, please, walk on my part of the garden. I'm happy to help out and save the holy books. And that's what happened. They started to walk on her part of the garden, and they were able to save all the Torah scrolls and the holy books that were in the synagogue. When it came time to pick the vegetables from the garden, Maryasha and the neighbor started to pick it on the same day. The potatoes in Maryasha's garden, the carrots in Maryasha's garden were huge and big and strong and beautiful. And the neighbors are weak and not so edible. The neighbor said, what happened? How did your potatoes come out so good? My carrots didn't come out so good. Maryasha said, it's very simple. I let the Jews walk on my garden when they were carrying the books. We thought that it was going to ruin the garden. I was even prepared to ruin the garden as long as we'll save the books. But it turned out that them walking on the garden, they only stamped on it and made the potatoes in the ground even stronger and healthier and made the roots even stronger. So now we have delicious potatoes and excellent carrots. And here we see that when you do things the right way, Hashem rewards you. We think we have it all figured out. We know which garden is going to grow best if you don't walk in it. But if you're doing it for the right reasons, Hashem helps out those that look out for Hashem's Torah and Hashem's holy books.